Welcome back, everybody. This is Modern Randy. I am Randy, and today we're going to be talking about the standard meta breakdown of this past weekend. What did well, what didn't do well, and what is catching people off by surprise. As always, guys, if you like what you're seeing, you like what I'm doing, go ahead and leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know what you're taking to your next standard RCQ. Love to hear what you guys are playing. Getting down to the first challenge, or starting off with the first challenge on Friday, we had 6 Boros Prowess decks, we had 5 Dimir midrange decks, we had 5 Mono White Caretakers Talents deck, we had 5 Golgari midrange decks, 3 Rug Combo, 2 Domain, 3 Jeskai Convoke, and then a couple different one-ofs in there. So, to no surprise, we're still seeing, 5 copies of Dimir midrange. Boros Prowess is probably going to be the deck that's going to be taking over instead of playing like the Mono Red or the Gruul Prowess decks that we've seen running around, just because Foundations did just come out. So, we had the Boros Charm. We have some of those other reasons to be playing white right now. The big surprise here, though, is the fact that the Mono White Caretakers Talent deck put up 5 copies in the top 32. This deck has kind of been waxing and waning in popularity. We've seen it put up a couple numbers, but when I say a couple, I mean usually 2. Like, literally, it's put up a couple of numbers. Hasn't really been doing too amazingly well. The deck seems to have started to pick up a lot of popularity. It seems like it's being able to prey on the Dimir midrange and Golgari midrange decks that are running around, according to people who I've talked to who have been playing the deck, and the other people who have been talking about this deck. It seems to be good against the midrange plan, and it has a bunch of life gain to kind of hold off the Boros aggro deck or these Prowess decks running around right now. That being said, it still has a terrible domain matchup, just heads up, like most of the midrange matchups. But that being said, kind of surprising to see, Caretakers put up 5 copies in this top 32. A little different. That being said, Caretakers Talent did take down first place as well. So there's nothing too amazing in this list. There's nothing too surprising in this list. There's no big, wow, we've never thought to play this card. Like, Virtue of Loyalty has become kind of a mainstay in the deck now as a 2-0 copy. You'll see kind of going through these challenges and stuff, Virtue has become like a mainstay card now, and along with the one Overlord of Mistborn. So that is kind of like the biggest technology with these decks moving forward. Split Up's now in the sideboard. That's another not big piece of technology, but that's another card that's seeing play that wasn't seeing play before. But outside of that, it's a bunch of removal, it's a bunch of card draw, and it's 4 Caretaker's Talents. Card's super powerful. Not too surprising to see this deck is doing well. Plus, it has basically a perfect mana base. You're never going to get screwed over on your colors when you're playing 18 planes. It's just good. That being said, though, nothing too surprising about this, but I do see how this deck is doing well. Laid Out Arms is a hell of a magic card when you're able just to answer pretty much every creature that gets put onto the field. You have Beza to catch up for your life gain. Overlord's really good. You have, Get Lost, Sunfall, and Soul Partitioner as your removal spells. And it makes sense why this is doing well. Then the deck that got 4th place is this Rakdos Pack deck. That kind of caught my eye. I just want to go over this. Basically, everyone do this combo was coming out. It was printed in Foundation. So you have Harmless Offering, which is 2 in a red, sorcery. Target opponent gains control, target permanent you control. Not really that good of a card, unless you have a reason to take advantage of it. And then we got Demonic Pack as well, which was 2 in double black. And it has, at the beginning of your upkeep, choose one of these that hasn't been chosen. So you can, deal 4 damage to any target, you gain 4 life, target opponent discards 2 cards, you draw 2 cards, and then you lose the game. So you have to keep picking one of these. So obviously, once you get the full value from pack, or even most of the value from pack, you can just Harmless Offering it away, and then make your opponent have to deal with the issue. But it's kind of an interesting little deck we have here, because it has a bunch of, Go for the Throat, Bitter Reunions, things like that. It's like we have the removal, we have a way to get through our deck. We have Herbrast Forge in here as a way to damage our opponent. It's a really weird little deck, and it just kind of caught my eye that I'm happy someone's doing this as a whole, because it needs to happen. I think this deck has some legs somewhere. I don't know if this is necessarily the final build that we're going to see. It's really creature light. It's only playing 1 Shieldred in the main. It seems like it shouldn't really do that well, but it did get 4th place, so I thought I'd just give it a nice little shout out, because it's always cool to see people innovating, making new decks and things of that nature. Moving on to the first standard challenge on Saturday. This one was really easy to do. We had 7 Dimir midrange decks, 6 Golgari midrange decks, 6 Boros Prowess decks, 4 Caretakers Talents deck, 3 Mono Red, 3 Rule Prowess, 2 Domain, and then this one Zombify Reanimate deck that I'll get to here in a second. But yeah, no one wanted to play anything interesting. Everyone was just like, we're playing the decks we know are good. And so, to no surprise, the Mirror Drain's back on top. We've seen that deck just kind of be dominating in the pure spirit. We've seen that deck kind of be dominating in this pure numbers sense. It seems to be a very popular deck among Magic players. It has a lot of gameplay, so it kind of makes sense. Golgari Midrange is a deck that's always been, right on Dimir's Tail. And then I think with what the deck's doing now with the Demon package, I think it is almost better than Dimir moving forward. We have Boros Prowess, no surprise. Like I said, I think it's going to be taking the place of this Gruul Prowess in these mono red decks, which you can see, it was double what the Gruul and mono red players were playing. So, and then Caretaker's Talent, once again, putting up 4 copies. We saw it win, the last challenge, so people were like, hey, maybe this is a real deal. Maybe this is what we should be playing. That being said, Golgari did take down the challenge this time. Again, they're not doing anything super broken or anything super surprising. We do see Scavenging Ooze as a 2-of getting added here thanks to Foundations. Of course, we have 4 Llanowar Elves, which is pretty much what everyone thought was going to happen with the deck. I do think that with the inclusion of Llanowar Elves, it makes the reason to play like Unholy Annex. Playing Unholy Annex a lot more. It's just a good little demon package that you get to play. A demon package you get to play. It gives you continuous card draw. We have Archfiend of the Draw, so it's already a good 4-mana 6/6, beatdown card. You get to, theoretically, you could live the dream by going turn 1 Elf, turn 2 Unholy Annex, into turn 3 Archfiend, into turn 4 make another 6/6 with opening the second door. So you can just put on a lot of pressure with this deck, as well as keeping up with the card value as well. So nothing too crazy to see in this list, nothing amazingly surprising. Like I said, Llanowar Elves, Scavenging Ooze in the main, we kind of expected that going into Foundations and what we thought would happen. Also, we have Vivien Reid in the sideboard, which I imagine we'll see end up seeing more copies of that in the sideboard, and even maybe some in the main, with just her ability to shoot down flyers and destroy enchantments. That's kind of a huge deal right now, being able to win the mid-range Grindfest, being able to shoot down demons as well as shoot your opponent's Unholy Annex. And then it's just good value all the way through. So now, not too surprising there. And then, so this got first place in the challenge, and then that Zombify deck is the one that got third place in this challenge. And it's definitely something, to say the least. So, excuse me. So this deck is basically Rakdos, in the sense of it's red-black for the most part. It's playing 4 Zombify as a big way to get back creatures. So we have 4 Atraxas, 4 Kadama World Eaters as our big creatures to get back. We got Fears Missing Out, Preachers. Oh, sorry, we also have a Volgrath there as well as our other creature to get back. So we have 9 big creatures to get back. To really maximize on Zombify, we have Fear Missing Out and Bitter Reunion as our ways to discard, along with Bitter Triumph as a removal spell that we can discard, removal spell to kill something and discard one of our fatties as a way for that, and then Preacher as our other creature of choice to keep the board clear, to help keep parity with the board. Playing a bunch of different removal with Duress and Cut Downs, Bitter Reunion, and then we're playing the Plurality of Grix as well. Just overall, it's a very balanced package, it seems. I think we're maybe playing too many fatties, in my opinion, especially cards that we can't ever cast. So I think that might be a little too much. But I mean, we do have the Elder Dragon War. It has its chapter 2 on it lets you discard any number of cards and draw that many cards. So we do have a lot of ways to discard and not get stuck with these in our hand. But I do think maybe we're going a little too heavy on the fatty side. I could be wrong. Obviously, I didn't build this deck. I didn't play this deck. And this guy got, this person got third place. So I'm not going to sit here and say that, I know better by any stretch of the imagination. But this is an interesting take on the deck. And it's interesting to see someone already, figure out a Zombify strategy, if you will. So we'll see if this is going to stay or if it's a flash in the pan, what happens with it. Maybe someone, builds a little bit better. Maybe this is already the correct build. And they got it right on the first try. But we'll see what happens with that. Going on to the second standard challenge of Saturday, we had 6 Golgari mid-range decks, 6 Dimir mid-range decks, and then 3 Domain, 2 Azorius Tempo, 2 Rug Combo, 2 Mono Red, 2 Caretaker's Talent, 2 Azorius Enchantment, and then a bunch of 1-ofs. So, no surprise here, Dimir mid-range is still putting up 6 copies. This deck has always been putting up almost the most copies every challenge. Golgari up there with 6 as well. I do think that we're really fighting back and forth. Caretaker's still putting up 2. This is the first time we've seen Caretaker's talent. Excuse me. Caretaker talent really put up multiple numbers and multiple challenges. Usually it'll put up a couple, like 1 or 2, in one of the challenges throughout the weekend, but it has put up numbers and now in all 3 so far. So it is kind of crazy this deck has. Seems like it's here to stick. It seems like people are really playing it. Obviously, it's not as much as Dometer or Golgari, but it is interesting. Also, Domain picking up 3 copies is kind of huge. We haven't really seen Domain really pick up popularity that much, so a little surprising to see that one picking up popularity as a whole. And Domain did end up winning. It is the Zur Domain. If you don't know what this card does, it does a lot more than it ever should. It's a 1/4 flying, and then enchantment creatures you control have Death Touch, Lifelink, and Hexproof, which is ridiculous to say the least. It has this sweet ability for 1 and a white target non-aura enchantment you control becomes a creature with its power and toughness equal to its converted mana cost, which is ridiculous when you're playing this deck. So being able to turn your Leyline Bindings into a 6/6 fly or 6/6 lifelink, death touch, and hexproof creature is just wild. Being able to turn your overlords that haven't come off their impending yet into 5/5s or 6/6 or 7/7. Sorry, I forgot Overlord and Mistborn is a 7-drop. 7/7 with like lifelink and hexproof is just a great way to crush your aggro opponents, crush your mid-range opponents, just kind of diminish them all together. But this deck isn't doing anything we haven't really seen before from Domain. Still the same kind of thing. We're playing the Overlords, we're playing Get Lost, Leyline Bindings, Up the Beanstalks, all the same kind of cards that you've been expecting. So nothing too crazy with that. I do think this deck definitely relies heavily on Overlord, the Green Overlord, to get Leyline Binding online or get it to where it's not super hard to cast. But it's not doing anything too surprising. I think this is going to be the correct build of Domain moving forward with Zur being just so good and being able to crush your aggro opponents, crush your mid-range opponents really easily. It's a must-kill threat, and not to mention it gives all your enchantment creatures hexproof is just huge. The Lifelink's also really great, but just having hexproof is amazing. Where my first removal spell has to be pointed at a 1/4 that essentially does nothing, and then I can kill the 6/5s and the 6/6s and things like that. Like it's so much more annoying to the fact that you have to kill Zur first, and it's just, I think, the correct build moving forward. Now, I don't think the mana base might be correct. Maybe there's some things to do tweak there. Same thing with the spells. Like maybe we want more temporary lockdowns. Maybe we want more sunfalls, things like that. So we'll see what happens with those numbers as a whole. But I think that the Forger is the correct moving forward. And then this is essentially green-white Caretaker's Talent. So this is an idea I've theory crafted a lot. So we have Lair War Elves and Overlord. The Green Overlord, as well as 4 Up the Beanstalks, is kind of our reason to be playing green in the main deck. And then we also get Biza, 4 of the White Overlords, Get Lost, Sunfalls, and 2 Soul Partitioners. It's just our way to control the board, bunch of card draw, a bunch of good things. So really interesting here with the Caretaker's Talent. We're really relying on our Overlords to make tokens. That's how we're going to get continuous draw from that. This did get 9th place, so it was just out of the top 8. Be curious to see if this is what Caretaker Talent goes to moving forward. It is playing a lot less removal in the sense of we don't have any of the laydown arms or things like that. So we'll see if this is where you want to be moving forward, or if we want to just make sure we keep with the mono white and just have a clean mana base that way. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I really like the fact of getting access to Vivian Reed though. I think she's a powerhouse right now. Trickle Flillback's also another good one, just to gain more life. I don't think the graveyard shenanigans are necessarily that great, but being able to gain life and destroy enchantments or artifacts is really good because we have access to recipes already in our sideboard. So be interesting to see if this is what Caretaker's Talent kind of moves towards or moves away from or does something. I do think that the mono white list is really good, but I think it could use the benefit of another color, and we'll see what happens with that if mono white Caretaker's Talent is what is this rules a day, or if these green variants or maybe another color variant pops up and starts doing better than those. Moving on to the Sunday challenge though, we had 5 Golgari mid-range decks, 4 Dimir mid-range decks, 3 Boros Prowess, 2 Mono Red, 2 Azorius Tempo, 2 Azorius Control, because there's some Mad Lads here, 2 Domain, 2 Rug Combo, 2 Gruul Prowess, 2 that Zombified deck that we saw earlier, 2 Rakdos aggro decks, and then a couple of different 1-ofs. Caretaker's Talent still putting up a number even, and it's just a 1-of. So, once again, not too surprising. Dimir mid-range, Golgari mid-range, those are 2 of the most popular decks right now. You're going to have to prepare for them. You're going to have to look out for them. You're going to see them, moving forward in any tournament you go to. Not too surprising. Once again, Gruul or Boros Prowess being on top of the red aggro decks there with, Gruul putting up only 2, Mono Red putting up only 2, and Boros putting up 3. So not as dominant as we've seen it before, but I do think that, Boros is probably going to be the correct answer moving forward just because of the, getting the different little white cards that we got to go along with it, with Boros Charm and things like that. So, nothing too surprising here. A bunch of people wanting to play a bunch of different decks, it looks like this time. So, did kind of have some different takes, different things of that nature. And then, ironically, the Azorius Tempo deck is what took down the tournament. So, this is something that we've seen a lot moving forward, or not a lot moving forward, but this is a deck we've seen a lot already, where you're playing the Abhorrent Oculus and the Haughty Djinn as your creatures to buy back. You have Picklock Prankster to mill. You get the Helping Hand and Recommission to buy them back. So this deck has a couple different numbers I think is a little weird. Between one of the Kioras, I had a friend in the Columbus 10K who was playing this deck, and they really enjoyed Kiora. They had, I think, as a 2 or 3 of in their deck, and they just really liked it as an extra angle in the deck. It also was good to rebuy back and just be good, essentially. Like when you're able to trigger it and get that 8/8, it's just an extra way to get value from your deck, as well as it just is a good value creature as a whole. This player is playing 4 Unsummon. I think that's incorrect. In my opinion, I think he should be playing Into the Floodball. It's just slightly different in the sense it's still an Unsummon. It still has, instant speed, bounce a creature, but it has that extra benefit of being able to bounce any kind of permanent as well by giving them a tapped fish, which doesn't matter when you're attacking in with a 5/5 flying eyeball. So, that being said, nothing else is too surprising in this list as a whole. They're playing 1 Negate main, which is a little bit different. And then when you go to the sideboard, nothing too crazy there, except the fact that they only had 1 Monstrous Mentor, which I'm not sure if is correct. I personally am a bigger fan of Monstrous Mentor than most people with this deck, and I would put it in the main if I was playing this deck. That's just me, though. I'm not saying that's the correct choice. That's just what I think as a whole. And then Shelter by Ghost is probably another good inclusion here moving forward with all those red Prowess deck, or not red Prowess decks, but really the Boros Prowess decks running around. You're going to need that extra life gain. I know that matchup is pretty challenging for this deck as a whole, so it's not too surprising to see them kind of edge something or have some kind of hedge for that matchup as a whole. So happy to see that. But nothing too surprising in this list. Like I said, Kiora starting to make her way into the deck. I think she's going to end up being a staple in the deck as probably a 2 of. Overall, just another way to kind of get more value from your deck, as well as being an additional threat. So, breaking down all the challenges we had this weekend, kind of going over with the numbers here. So, Golgari midrange and Dimir midrange both put up 22 copies in all the challenges. Not too surprising. Like I said, these have been some of the biggest decks since before Foundations, and I imagine they're not going to get any worse after Foundations. I think Golgari is going to get just better as it keeps going on. I'm not saying Dimir is a bad choice by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying that I think Golgari is probably the better choice moving forward. But time will tell. Obviously, I'm not, all pro Magic players at all, so I can't give you the best information possible. I can just give you what I think is correct. I think if you're trying to build a mid-range deck to take to your RCQ this season, I would go and lean towards Golgari mid-range. Obviously, do what's in your budget, do what you think is correct. I'm not sitting here telling you what you should play, but I think that's probably the best mid-range deck to take as it stands right now. Boros Prowess put up 15 copies. Not too surprising to see that doing better than the Mono Red or the Gruul Prowess. Then we had Caretaker's Talent putting up 12 copies, which is surprising because, like I said, easily that puts up 2 or 3 max over the weekend. So it puts up 12 copies. Kind of surprising to see the deck doing so well. People seem to think that it has a good game against both the mid-range decks that are running around. Time will tell on that one. Domain putting up 9 copies. Kind of surprising. Domain's been on the back burners for the longest time. I think they're finally realizing that the Xur build is probably the correct build and gets to beat up on the mid-range plan. So we'll see if we see more domain or if the aggro deck will keep domain out of the mid-range deck's way. Then Mono Red had 8 copies, Rug Combo had 7 copies. That deck seems to keep popping up. I don't think the Rug Combo deck is bad by any means. I lost to it in one of the rounds at the at the 10K in Columbus this weekend. I think the deck does a lot of things well. It's very interesting to see. We'll see if it keeps putting up numbers or if it does eventually just kind of drop or lose its interest. Azorius Temple putting up 5 copies, Jeskai Convoke putting up 5 copies. That Zombify Reanimate deck did 4 copies, which is kind of surprising since it just kind of was a breakout deck. And then we had Azorius Enchantment do 2, Gruul Prowess do 2, Mono Black do 2, a Rakdos Aggro deck did 2, there's 2 Rakdos Pack deck overall, 2 Azorius Control deck with Mad Lads, and a couple 1-ofs. So overall, we can see the metagame is still leaning towards a mid-range strategy as a whole, with Golgari Domain being the top, the 2 biggest decks, and then aggro also is a big component of it. Because, you know, if we take all the aggro decks that we have 15 Boros, we had 8 Mono Red, you know, so right there that's 23, and then if we add the 2 Gruul Prowess, that puts us to 25. So technically, aggro had more copies overall. I mean, if we want to add the Rakdos aggro package too, that's 2 more, so 27. So, you know, aggro decks are still very popular. They're just broken up into like 3 different categories at this point, so they don't look like they're dominating as much as they are. But that does put, you know, 25 at least copies into these top 32s. So it is a little crazy. You know, you have to be prepared for the aggro matchup. You need to figure out what you're doing. How are you gaining life? How are you, you know, playing more removal spells? And we have to see, well, what's going to happen with the Boros package as well. I do think that there's a good burn package running around that it's going to take advantage of people running all these removal spells and just play more burn and kind of burn their opponents out. But we'll see what happens with the, you know, the whole aggro deck. And then, like I said, Caretaker Talent putting up more numbers than it has in the last, I think, since I started doing these. So kind of crazy to see Caretaker Talent start doing really well. We'll see if that's here to stay or if it's going to, you know, evolve into, you know, Caretaker's Talent being a 2 or 3 color deck, probably more or less like a 2 color deck. Seeing if it's going to stay the mono white, though, will be interesting as a whole. I think that if you're looking to play any of your RC cubes, you know, this coming weekend, this coming week or weeks, you need to have a game plan for Golgari. You need to have a game plan for Dimir. You need to have a game plan for the aggro decks. Those are like the big ones I would have game plans for. That being said, I think that if you're looking to pick up, like, quote unquote, like the best deck in the format, you should probably be building into Golgari. I think that deck only gets better over time as people keep figuring out and tweaking it to be better and better. But we'll just have to see. You know, it's hard to say what's going to be the best deck for sure. But I would have money on Golgari as it stands right now. That being said, we did have the 10K from SCG Con Columbus going on. So this is just a breakdown of a lot of the lists. I kind of was just going down until we hit into single digits. I wasn't going to list every single deck that was played. It just doesn't matter. And as I said, I thought Golgari Midrange was the best deck. It did put up 42 copies in the entire 10K. There was 270 people as a whole that registered for this event, with Golgari Midrange obviously being the biggest number of people, or biggest number of decks taken, or the most played deck taken. Dimir Midrange was next with 27 copies, which is kind of wild, because as we've looked over these weeks, we've seen Dimir Midrange always either be on top or tied with Golgari Midrange, and then when it came to an actual paper event, though, it looks like Golgari Midrange was what people wanted to take, what they thought would be better, what they thought was better positioned, you know, with 21% of the meta and out of all the decks that were 2 or more played. I didn't do all the singleton decks because this just wasn't worth going through all that and trying to figure it out for sure. So then we had Dimir Midrange with 27, not too surprising there. I think that deck's still really well positioned. Gruul Prowess had more copies, which was surprising, with 23. And then we had Boros Prowess with 15. Notably, if you look down the list, there's also this Boros Mice, which is 9. So SCG broke them up into 2 different categories, a Boros Prowess list and a Boros Tempo deck or Boros Aggro deck or something like that. There was like 2 different things. I called it Boros Mice because it was more of the Boros decks that were playing like the Mice package with the Hero, Challenger, the 1/2 that gives Trample or Double Strike. That name always escapes me. So as a whole, though, we know we did see a lot more Boros played. If you combine those 2, that is 24, which is, you know, one more one more than what the Gruul Prowess deck was running, so I'm not too sure how you want to break those up. But then we also had Azorius Tempo at 5, Domain at 11, Mono Red at 10, Mono White Caretakers at 9, Jeskai Convoke at 7, Dimir Demon still seeing play at 6, the Rug Combo deck doing 5, Azorius Enchantment at 4, Orzhov Midrange at 4, Mono Black at 3, Azorius Control at 3, because we have some super big Mad Lads, and then a Rakdos Lizard deck running around with 2 copies, and there's a bunch of the other one copies as well that was in this event as a whole. I did play in this event. I didn't do well. I got 3-3 and dropped. I was playing the Boros Mice version, essentially. I was playing a Boros deck with Burn Package, as well as, playing the Mice combo and then having 4 Screaming Nemesis in the main as well. Deck felt really strong, really good. I lost a lot to Flooding Out as a whole. I was playing 20 lands. I think that there's some ways to mitigate what how I lost. So I'm going to go back to the drawing board on that deck. As a whole, but I do think that deck is very well positioned. I think it's very, very powerful. Also, I think, if you're not wanting to spend a lot of money or you're not wanting to invest in like a mid-range style deck, I would look at picking up Boros, some type of Boros deck to take and take down your next RCQ very easily. The deck felt super powerful. If you don't flood out, it's very hard for your opponent to win. It just does so well. It's a very dominant deck. Most games I was winning, my opponent was just on the back foot from turn 2, where I'm applying pressure consistently, and then you're kind of sitting with the cards in your hand. I know most games I was just like, all right, you're at 11. I'm just counting the burn in my hand, going, all right, I have 10 burn damage in my hand. I'm just waiting now to see when can I pull that last, when do I draw that last couple of burn damage, or just chipping them down. Like, the deck does so well at just chipping down your opponent, and then as soon as they get down low enough, you're like, all right, cool. End of turn, deal 4 damage with Boros Charm, untap, Bolt Wave, kill you. It's just, the deck just gets to play this really fun game of, hey, I'm going to continuously attack you because I have enough creatures to do so. And then I'm going to burn you out when you eventually have either answered my board or gotten low enough for me to just be able to burn you out. So I do think that if you're trying to take it out of the tournament, you're trying to get into standard relatively cheaply, I would definitely look at playing the Boros. The Boros deck, I think it's roughly like $100, maybe $150 maximum to play. And if you've been playing at all in the past, if you're you just got into Magic today, then yeah, it's gonna still be expensive. But any deck you look at is gonna be like $100 right now in standard. But that is relatively cheap as a whole. And the Boros deck, I think, is just very well positioned and here to stay. I don't think it's going to go anywhere anytime soon. But that being said, very popular to see, or it was good to see. Mid-range definitely was the winners of the SCG 10K with at Columbus. We saw a bunch of mid-range decks doing well. Aggro still really well prevalent. We had 23 copies of Gruul Prowess, 24 copies of Boros Prowess, basically. So, and then 10 copies of Mono Red. So it's not like aggro is going anywhere either. So very interesting to see kind of this breakdown. It was really fun to see, standard being popular, people being happy to play standard as a whole. That being said, the first place deck was this Mono White Caretaker's Talent deck. Definitely put up 2 copies in the top 8, which is very disproportionate when we go back and look. There's only 9 copies in the entire tournament. So 9 people out of 270 put up first and second place. So like I said, nothing too surprising about this list as a whole. We see Authority of Councils was in the sideboard. Not too surprising to see that card get picked up for this deck, as well as playing, the 2 Virtue of Loyalty was played as well. Nothing too surprising there. Overlord. So this deck is doing well. It is well positioned, I think, as a whole. Moving forward right now, it seems like it's being able to prey on the mid-range decks that are running around. I do think that you can still beat this deck with Prowess or any of the aggro lists you want to play as a whole. So it's not like this deck is going to be dominating. We're not going to see this deck, take over the meta game and it just be, all Caretaker Talents decks by any stretch of the imagination. Especially if you look back at the challenges we went over, it wasn't dominating there either. I do think this is just a well-positioned deck. It's super fun to play as well. It's something I have built. It's something I thought about taking, but I wanted to be on the aggressive plane. I wanted to be that that person who was punishing people for missing land drops, mistinguishing their plays, not drawing the removal spell at the right time type situation here, especially on like week 1 of a new new format with Foundations just dropping, but it is interesting to see what's going to happen to Standard as a whole. As always, guys, if you like what you're seeing, like what I'm doing, leave a like on the video, subscribe to my channel to keep up with everything, and let me know what you think is going to be dominant in this new Foundation Standard. What are you playing in your next RCQ? I'd love to hear from you. And as always, guys, I'll catch you guys next time.